I recently took advantage of half price books after Christmas sale. Got a small half price books haul and thought I'd share it. So, first item is C.S. Lewis's Reflection on the Psalms. And I've been wanting to read this because I pray the Psalter. That's something I started doing maybe a couple years ago. Um, just a practice I've learned from my exposure to Anglican traditions and using the Book of Common Prayer. And yeah, I wanted to see what Lewis's thoughts were. Lewis was an Anglican, was a member of the Church of England, and he deals with some of the imprecatory Psalms, some of the more difficult or foreign things that we may stumble on in using the Psalms in our own devotions and prayer practice today. So I'm about halfway through it, and it's been very good so far. I've been very glad I picked it up. He mentions on page 7, he uses the Coverdale Psalter primarily because of his being an Anglican, that's what he's familiar with. He does note that even of the old translators, he is by no means the most accurate, and of course, a sound modern scholar has more Hebrew in his little finger than poor Coverdale had in his whole body. But in beauty and poetry, he and St. Jerome, the great Latin translator, are beyond all whom I know. I really like how he put that, and yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that for sure. It's interesting he notes that I've usually checked and sometimes corrected his version from that of Dr. Moffat. That's referring to the Moffat translation, which I'm familiar with because my friend Joe has one and really likes it, Joe St. Eggs. And Joe actually sent me a New Testament of the Moffat, a little pocket version, which is really cool. So, yeah, definitely, if you decide to read this book, it may be worth getting familiar with Moffat's translation of the Psalms. And he provides some interesting examples I liked. He notes an example from Psalm 23, which we're all very familiar with, of course, noting that there's a bit of a, maybe not imprecatory, but kind of a verse along those lines, which I never really gave much thought to. Thou shalt prepare a table for me against them that trouble me. Or as Dr. Moffat translates it, thou art my host, spreading a feast for me while my enemies have to look on. That really got me thinking about that line and what that means, and how long I have kind of just glossed over what's being said there because of my familiarity with Psalm 23 from hearing it so often growing up. So, yeah, I really like that, and that makes me think it would be really worthwhile to get familiar with Moffat's translation. But yeah, enjoying this and finding it very helpful so far. I'll probably finish this next few days. I'm going to note, just some of you are from Central Ohio like me, you may be familiar with Xenos. This apparently belonged to their library at one time. They're a church in Central Ohio. They're now called Dwell, and they have there's a reputation there. There's a lot that's been said about them and what they're like, and I won't get into that because I'm not familiar with them or with anyone from there, but I'm just noting that I did notice that, and but despite what you may or may not think of Xenos, great book. And then, so on the subject of C.S. Lewis, the next item, the life and writings of C.S. Lewis, from the Great Courses, brought to us by Professor Lou Marcos of Houston Christian University. They just changed their name not long ago. It was for many years Houston Baptist University. This I'm already familiar with. I borrowed this from a friend who's a pastor several years ago and listened to about half of it, maybe a little more. But it is a great look at Lewis's work and introduction to Lewis, and it is far from dry. So if you're like, it's like a college course from a university professor, that sounds boring, not at all. Professor Marcos has a tremendous love of Lewis's works and just excitement that is uh, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful to listen to, and he will make you, if you aren't very familiar with Lewis, or you know, I think a lot of Christians are, but if you're not, you'll want to be after listening to this. So this was wonderful. And these great courses, these used to be very expensive. I think these days they probably do more, it seems like, of a streaming service. But it used to be you'd buy these and they were expensive. And this is a 6 CDs, I think. And I don't know what it would have sold for prior, but I got it for $8. So very happy with that. And yeah, it is wonderful. He's got a few videos on YouTube where he talks about some things. So if you want to get a feel for what he's like, you can check that out. But yeah, if you ever come across this for cheap like I did, and you're into Lewis, buy it. Absolutely. The last thing that I picked up, the camera's struggling to focus. I didn't clean up very well. There's a lot of junk laying around, and I think the camera's looking at it. ESV Proverbs Daily Wisdom, English Standard Version. Well, yeah, it's Crossway. Of course, it's going to be the ESV, but the book of Proverbs is a unique and treasured part of the Bible. It's best read slowly and meditatively. And you can read this yourself. But basically what they've done is they've created a 1-year plan to read the Psalms. To read Proverbs and put it into a little book. And I am a sucker for little prayer books and similar things. And I saw this, and this was also $8. So it was originally 10, 20% off, 8. So pretty cool. And it's brand new. The ribbon hasn't even been pulled out. So apparently somebody got this, opened it up, and then never used it. But yeah, it's broken up into very small readings. So 365 readings. So the first day, Proverbs 1 through 7. Second day, Proverbs 1, 8 through 19. Third day, still on the first chapter. So yeah, very small chunks that you can kind of take your time, read it, study it, mull it over. I like it. So I plan to use this for doing exactly that. You can see we get a lot of very just small little bits to kind of chew on each day. I like that it doesn't have the dates in the headers here. So if you miss a day or whatever, or you decide to do it over 2 years or whatever you want to do, or do it faster, you have that option. The reading plan itself is in the back if you want to follow it. There's the end of Proverbs. There's the reading plan. So you can just kind of go at your own pace, that's what I'll do. That's kind of how I do things. So this reading plan is available on esv.org, but when you use esv.org and you sign up for a reading plan, then it does assign the readings to specific days starting on the day that you sign up. So unfortunately, I don't like that as much as this little book, how it lays things out and leaves it up to you. So yeah, that's kind of neat. This is no longer in print, so this can only be bought used or from if a supplier happens to have some still. It's a faux leather, it's a sewn binding, it's printed fairly nicely, it's, seems pretty well made. So comes in a little slip case that I'll probably not really use because it's kind of a little bit of a hassle getting it in and out of the slip case, but yeah. So there it is. That's my after Christmas sale half price books haul. Some great items that I'm looking forward to using. Hope you enjoyed seeing it. God bless. Have a wonderful day, friends.